It's the time for the semi-finals at the Freestyle Chess Grand Slam Tour 2025 in Weissenhaus, Germany. We have Vincent Keymer with the white pieces taking on Magnus Carlsen. Magnus has been absolutely flawless in this event in the quarterfinals, where he beat Nodirbek Abdusattorov with two amazing games. On the other hand, Vincent managed to eliminate Alireza Firouzja. The clock has begun. This is the position that we have on the board right now. It's a very, very interesting one with the knight, queen, rook, bishop, king, rook, pawn, knight. And he starts off with pawn to g4. He's taking control of two squares here. And now Magnus Carlsen brings his knight out to g6. This is a good move. He's looking at the h4 and f4 squares here. And Vincent brings his knight out to b3. It's not so easy what setup black should go for. Maybe c6, opening his bishop, f6, getting the other bishop on this diagonal. Magnus decides to play e5. That's a dangerous move to make, because when you play this move, you are opening up this diagonal to the king. Also, this pawn is a little bit soft. But let's see what Vincent plays here. He brings his other knight to g3. And this knight is now looking at the f5 square and the h5 square. Magnus pushes his pawn to f6. Very logical move, opening the queen, and also later on the bishop can move here. One of the things that you will learn about freestyle chess is that it's all about getting your pieces into the game. You will see that with the move c4, the bishop has now opened up on this diagonal. Let's see what Magnus comes up with next now. Ooh, he simply castles it out here. And that's an interesting move, because he now wants to perhaps break in the center with d5. It's quite possible. We'll see if that actually happens. But in this long castle, you just had to replace the king and the rook. d4 played. And now taking the pawn makes absolute sense, because after knight takes d4, you can try and continue in the position. But Magnus decides not to take. And he brings his knight to b6. But this would allow white to take even more space in the center with d5. Will Vincent do that? He thinks for a bit and pushes his pawn to d5. A fantastic move. So now white has space on the king side, also in the center. And what is Magnus going to do? He plays his pawn to d6. In a way, he's just accepted a slightly inferior position. This feels a lot like King's Indian gone wrong. The bishop comes to f5 with a check. And I believe what Vincent wants to do is he wants to play e4 later on, but he wants his bishop outside the pawn chain. So check, but on the other hand, it's slightly helping Magnus, because when Magnus has less space, he's able to trade off pieces. f3 now, opening up the queen on this diagonal. Magnus plays a6. This pawn push might look very little one, but the idea is to put the bishop on this long diagonal. Vincent plays pawn to e4. With this move, he has weakened his f4 square. That seems like a weakness. The knight does jump in to f4. And now you will see that knight coming to d3 can be a nice move for black. So Vincent takes on d7. And you have rook takes d7. Now how exactly do you continue here is the big question. He plays king c2, stopping the knight from coming here. But look at this. Knight takes c4. You can go king b1, attacking the knight. And the knight cannot go back because of queen takes b6. So with all these possibilities, Magnus decides to play bishop e7 and not take the pawn. He's looking at the queen. But the knight cannot give a good discovered attack, because right now the bishop is unprotected. So bishop d2, a nice move, attacking the knight on f4. Magnus plays king b8, defending the bishop. The pressure and the tension is mounting. Vincent has only 24 minutes. Magnus has 38 minutes on the clock. Now the bishop comes to e3. A nice little move so that he's built a battery on this diagonal with the queen and the bishop. Knight goes to h3, attacking the queen. Well, the queen has to move to g2. And he does it. He attacks the knight. And Magnus must come back to f4. What else? He does come back and attack the queen. I believe Magnus would be fine with a draw after queen g1, knight h3. But will Vincent be okay? No, Vincent goes queen to f2. And if you now attack the queen again, I can simply move the queen away. Magnus plays his pawn to h5. He's not going to just sit around. He's wanting to create his own counterplay in the position. And most notably, he wants to create it down the f file. So the rook comes into the center of the board for Vincent. Now pawn takes pawn taken. And well, bishop takes f4, e takes f4, queen takes f4. Is that even a threat? I mean, black would be, I guess, happy to give that up. So he goes knight to c8, trading the bishops. In a way, Magnus is saying to Vincent that, look, I'm trading off pieces, I have less space. And on the other hand, I am trying to play down the h file here. That's what my plans are. So, pawn to c5. Vincent pushes the pawn forward. He is himself having such an initiative near black's king. Magnus takes the pawn. Clearly, you didn't want the pawn to promote one step further. Pawn takes pawn. The bishop takes the pawn, attacking the rook and the bishop here. So pawn to g6. And with this move, you may want to transfer the rook to the h file. That could be the idea. And clearly you can't take the rook because the queen is hanging. So he takes on a7, knight takes on a7. And I really want to get my king to safety on b1. And that's exactly what Vincent does. He gets his king back. He opens up the path of his rook. And his idea is to play his knight to c5. Queen h7 played. The queen is now attacking the h2 pawn and also looking at the e4 pawn here. Knight to c5. The knight attacks the b7, a6 and the d7 rook. Magnus brings the rook upwards. Rook to d6. And now this idea of knight f1, knight e3. The knight would be a powerhouse here. But Vincent decides to trade off the knights. He plays knight e2. And that allows Magnus to actually come closer to equality. This might be the best position he has in some time. So knight takes knight. Seems like a good move. He takes. Queen takes. And now this idea of knight to b5 to d4, getting the knight into the center of the board, seems like an obvious one. Magnus does it. Knight to b5. He definitely is fighting back here. Vincent has quite a lot of play in the position, but Magnus has his own trump cards now. Queen goes to c4. Have to be careful here whether you want to jump in the center with the knight or not, because white could sacrifice an exchange at the right moment. Magnus plays rook to c8 and look at the times on the clock. Magnus has 16 minutes. Vincent has 10 minutes 40 seconds. And now pawn to a4, pushing the knight away. The knight comes into the center. And Vincent's next move is absolutely stunning. g5, he's breaking up the pawn structure and he's sacrificing the pawn. Why does he do so? Rook d8 played. Well, the idea is that if you take here, he's going to sack an exchange and push the pawns forward. And these are super dangerous pawns, which is the reason why Magnus plays rook d8. And now Vincent takes on f6. Rook takes f6 is going to be taken here. Magnus has 14 minutes on the clock. Vincent has 6 minutes. Magnus is resisting well here. Vincent is finding some brilliant ideas. Now is taking down d4, making sense because takes e5 still looks pretty strong and it's possible, but instead he goes rook f1, trying to take the open file here with the rook. Magnus goes rook to b6, and he's essentially telling Vincent that look, my rook is eyeing this square, my queen is eyeing this, you are in some trouble. Rook f2, defending everything on the second rank. And Magnus pushes his pawn to g5. Now look at this queen eyeing the e4 pawn and also the king. But for now the knight is defending the e4 pawn. So king a2 played. Just moving the king away from that diagonal. And now time-wise Magnus is doing well. He has 7 minutes. Vincent has just 2 minutes 47 seconds. And Vincent now doubles down the f file. What is Magnus going to do? Because there is a threat of rook to f7. He pushes g4, which is a mistake. And now look at this variation. Takes, rook f2, queen h4. I chop here, and when you take on f2, boom. And it's a checkmate here. Will Vincent find this move, rook f7, or not? It's a very important moment. He has 1 minute to figure things out. No, he misses it. He plays queen c3 and the position is once again equal. A big miss there by Vincent Keymer, but it was not easy with just a minute left on the clock. Now, how is Magnus Carlsen going to continue here? He's calming himself down and trying to figure out a move. He plays knight to f3, blocking the f file, and that's an excellent move. Vincent goes rook g2. He's attacking now the g4 pawn. Not an easy position for Magnus. He goes rook g8, trying to defend. Now there can be threats of rook takes, pawn takes, and the rook hanging on g8. For now, the queen is there. Vincent with 1 minute 27 seconds again makes a calm move. Rook f2 and just stays and hangs in there. Rook comes to d6 for Magnus. And what does Vincent Keymer do next is the big question. He finds a fantastic move, queen e3. And why is this great? Because he's attacking the king here and he wants to move his knight away with a tempo. Magnus goes back with his king to a8. But now the knight can jump into e6. The pressure mounts. Knight to e6. Excellent move by Vincent Keymer. Many ideas are there in the position. For now, he pushes his pawn to c6. And that's a massive blunder here by Magnus Carlsen. Two moves are winning here. Queen b6 and queen a3. Can Vincent Keymer find one of them? Especially queen a3 is an absolutely epic move. Hitting the rook. You just don't have ways to protect the rook there. Look at Vincent. He's thinking here. Only 36 seconds, finds it. With 11 seconds on the clock. If rook d7, there is knight f8 with a fork. You can't do anything else. He takes the exchange, pawn takes. But this is game over now. Magnus Carlsen is losing this game completely. Pawn takes here, and look at Magnus's clock. He has just 1 second when he makes this move, rook c8, but just rook takes g4 is a free pawn. f3 is hanging. Vincent is going to take this pawn. Magnus writes down the move and tells his opponent it's fine. I'm going to resign this game. And Vincent Keymer manages to beat Magnus Carlsen. What a win in the first game of the semifinals. Magnus is really unhappy. He signs the score sheet, puts the pieces back, and this is a huge victory. Vincent just needs a draw in the next game in order to qualify to the finals. Will that happen? Time will tell. For now, he's done something truly special. Beaten Magnus Carlsen, who is incredible at freestyle chess in his own terrain. An amazing win for the homeboy.